Hi everyone, it's Martin Root with Project Heaven on Earth. I'm delighted to welcome today the founder of the Evolutionary Collective, Patricia Albere. Welcome, Patricia.
Thanks, Martin. Good to be here.
Good to be here. We had our first meeting in Santa Fe, New Mexico many, many years ago, and we started talking about Heaven on Earth, and you told me about how Heaven on Earth happened for you when you first realized it. You want to recount that story for us?
Yeah, the first time I was ever asked was in a shared place with Warner Earhart. We both did the training way back when.
The old
And I
Escoville, yeah.
was 19 years old, and he basically, there was this thing of like, who are you? What's the space in which your life occurs? What's the stand that you are? And it was clear. I didn't even have to think twice. It was heaven on earth. It was this experience of always wanting to bring what is more perfect, more beautiful, more true, more divine here into this world, into the manifest world. And so I took a stand for that back then. And my life, I've never questioned. I mean, it's always been some version of a dedication to bringing what feels like more love, more beauty, more goodness, more perfection into the world. And the work that I'm doing now is similar. Uh-oh. Love is about to walk the path. Excuse me.
That was your,
Sorry.
I'm assuming that's your cat.
That is my cat, and that's Prem, and he is definitely a version of Heaven on Earth, without question.
That was not planned, ladies and gentlemen. That was just perfect, perfect, perfect. So, all right, so you have this experience in which you know, not you think, you know that it is about heaven on earth, and that is the standard
No
of
question.
taking life. No question.
Yeah, I don't have any separation from that whatsoever for 40, 50, 45 years.
And then the most recent manifestation of that is your work on in the Evolutionary Collective. You're the founder of that. Tell us a little bit about what that work is and how for you that fits into your stand for heaven on earth.
Okay. I mean, one of the elements that I feel of that is an expression of heaven on earth is the emergent quality. It's like how heaven begins to manifest in this world, like when it's just peeking out with its freshness. So, I think when Jesus showed up on the planet, and instead of, an eye for an eye and having a certain level of an expression of law and not as much love.
Right.
When he said, turn the other cheek and love your neighbor as yourself. And it was a revolutionary, emergent level of love that he was bringing through that was shocking. People couldn't obviously not adjust fully in those days because of what happened to him. So there's always a place where heaven is coming in right at the edge of what's possible for human beings. That's the part I am particularly in service of. And so Evolutionary Collective is what I realized was that part of heaven is that we've been working for a long time in the personal sphere. So, there are different evolutions in the consciousness of humankind. And there was a pre-personal phase, when people were more primitive and they were sort of traveling around in tribes, and they didn't have a sense of individuality particularly at all. It was more like a herd-like mentality for thousands of years as we were developing. And for the last thousands of years, we've been developing a sense of the personal, a sense of more and more individuation. I mean, even back in the Middle Ages, there were no human rights. The concept human rights didn't exist. Kings had rights, maybe the Pope had rights, but human beings did not have rights at all. And individuation wasn't something that was given to everyone in a particular way. And now, as we have Pandora. We have, I live in the Bay Area, which is like extreme. I mean, you can go into any coffee shop and get 5 different kinds of milk and coffee, just exactly, particularly the way I want it with the swirl on the top. And I expect it. I actually expect this level of that my individuality and my sense of being a person is so seen and recognized. I mean, that is what we are given to expect at this point. Transpersonal is the next phase. So it keeps going. And so in the beyond personal, post personal. It doesn't not include my individuality. It doesn't not include yours and your sense of higher purpose and all the rest of, what people are still developing. But we need to start moving into how do we then come together like and be orchestrated by something greater than just our personal sense of our mission, our sainthood, our enlightenment, even our own individual meditation into awakening. There's got to be some place where we start getting taken together.
Yeah.
And so that's my work. My work is with a committed group of people that is growing. We do other things, things that are less committed, where you can explore some of the possibilities of this consciousness and mutual awakening, something that you've experienced. But the core of the work is in the most extreme, purified version of how can humans come together, people that have developed personally, people that do have a good sense of who they are, and psychologically and spiritually, they know who they are, at least to a large degree, and that they come together, and we discover that when we become a multicellular humanity, when we consciously come together, we don't just know we have unity and we're all one. Knowing that, in my experience, doesn't change the fact that for the most part, everybody functions like they're a separate something. So we're experimenting with this dissolution and discovering that your individuality becomes more heightened, not in separation, not in feeling like you're a separate something. And it's pretty mind-blowing. So to me, that's another way in which to bring more truth, more beauty, more goodness, and more divinity into this world.
Beautifully said, Patricia. One of the fears as you were talking now is, oh my God, I'll lose my individual identity. But in fact, you're saying no. Not only will you not lose it, it'll be heightened, and what's present is we, us. And so, what's important for me in terms of your work? First of all, I think it's really on cutting edge, is how that applies to Heaven on Earth. Because for me, Heaven on Earth is individual and it's collective. The way I say it is, Heaven on Earth is the new story of what it means to be an individual. Excuse me. Heaven on Earth is the new story of what it means to be a human and what it means to be humanity. Both the individual and the collective.
Right. Definitely. And it's not one or the other. The ego, the separated ego, is the one that worries. Because the way that we've developed is in this sort of cathecting to our body. Our body is separate from other bodies, right? It's cathecting to, these are my emotions and my this and my that. And so we worry that our subjective experience is going to somehow be taken over by a lower level of development. A lower level of development is the pre-personal. We have a pre-personal experience with our mothers. You're merged with your mother. When you're born, you don't know if you're her or me, or, I mean, it's all one thing. So you develop individually, and then you need to keep going if you have developed a high level of individuality. And a lot of people won't give it up. I mean, they're so busy with their own agenda, their own success, their own service, their own whatever, which is fine. But we need a certain, we need at least, a couple thousand people on the planet to be able to say, okay, I'm pretty okay as is. My world is pretty good. I can afford to spend a certain amount of energy in this discovery of the connectivity between us and with a group of people that are like-minded and also are committed and have, a lot to give to the situation, to see what happens if we build the nervous system. It's like a nervous system between the cells, only it's human cells. And, a single cell creature is not that, it's helping. Single cell creature is not that developed. When you start to create multicellular organisms, the consciousness, the complexity, what it can do, up levels. And wouldn't it be the same for us? I mean, if you listen to the news, what we have is so many people with so many agendas and so many, conflicting things. There's no way to coordinate that. I don't care how hard you listen to the other person. We listen to each other and try to understand across the distance. We're always told across the distance. It is not going to happen. I mean, Einstein was right. We need to go to another level of consciousness to solve what's happening here, being separate and learning how to navigate our separateness, will never do it. So we need to have a bunch of humans find out what is the, how do you come together? How do you wake up that organism? And then what does it do? And what does it need? And how do you stay aligned in a certain way so that that can actually begin to function? Just like a great sports team, a great, jazz trio, they go somewhere, they become something for a period of time. And we watch it, everybody gets excited. Everybody's like, ah, it's not, it isn't even about the team winning. There's just like we're witness to some phenomenon that is such a turn on. It's exciting, when that clicks in. So
why is it a turn on? I want to go there. Why is it a turn on for us?
Because we recognize, some part of us goes, oh, yes, I remember. It's like the consciousness of humanity is asleep. Just like individually you can be asleep, and you've worked with people, when people start to wake up from being like a normal person, and they kind of go, wow, there's awakening, and there's a way to see myself and know myself, they get all excited. There's a kind of excitement about that discovery and that journey. It's the same thing collectively. I think we're asleep almost all the time as a humanity, and every once in a while we wake up for a minute and we get excited because we feel ourselves as the whole of it connected to everyone, and we love it.
It's interesting. How do I say this? There's a recognition of that, right? We're excited because we know about it.
Right.
And so your notion of we're asleep to it, and yet when we see it in a sports team or all the examples you use, something goes, oh, I know that, and I know what happens when I'm in that, or when we're in that.
Well, and you're in it. I mean, you identify. So if you probably tested people neurologically, their resonance is with the team. And when everyone's watching together, I have a friend who owns a great restaurant near here where I live, and they have the sports things like when the Warriors were playing. I mean, people were going crazy. And I went one night, by mistake. I was like there. I wasn't planning it. And you couldn't talk. I mean, you couldn't talk with the person you were with. You had to just participate in this, sort of scream that would erupt in the room, and then people would eat and drink, and then the next thing. And you could feel it. You were drawn into this sense of connectivity with the team, with that sense of unity. And that's exciting. We love that.
What you're awakening in me yet again, Patricia, and every time we're together, is I know inherently about the experience of we-ness. I haven't had it a lot, and yet every time, and not yet, but every time I'm in it, it gets stronger. It's like a muscle that's been atrophied, and it gets stronger. And so what I love about your work is you're having us, A, remember that we do know what that is, and B, get excited about it, and C, do the work of being in it. Because one of the other things I hear from you is this is such new work, such new territory. It's like when the first, whatever was called, that fish came out on the land, right? It's like, whoa.
And the loathsome fish, yeah.
Yeah. Like... And he goes back to his friends and said, there's this thing called land and air. What are you talking about? But we know.
You're going to die. Yeah, you're going to die if you do that. Yeah.
So that, for me, is one of the foundations of Heaven on Earth, because Heaven on Earth, for me, clearly is a we space. And so that waking up, that unification, and even though we see all the hoo-ha going on in the world today, the political, the war, the da-da-da, underneath what you're addressing is, no, we do know about this new space. And we can not only know about it, but we can, the word I would use is presence it, or help cause it to emerge. Is that the verb?
I just want to correct one thing.
Please.
We recognize it because we know the potential. We know that we have that potential, but it does take, so for evolution to move forward at this point, it's not just automatic. It isn't just, we're growing a new kind of skin or something. Those things were just given. We didn't have to choose to participate in it. At this point, as humans, we need humans to choose to participate in what I call creative union, which is the coming together. You actually have to practice making the linkages. So it isn't just, oh, I remember and it's already there. we're actually becoming, like what we're practicing in the Evolutionary Collective is with a committed group of people building the neural pathways of connectivity so that 24/7, there's over 100 of us that are actually in a kind of connectivity all the time. And so, and you'll love this with Heaven on Earth. We've been focused on grace.
Mm.
So we're really looking at what is grace at this level and how does grace function when you have a collective where we are always connected in a certain way and it's bigger. We have like more, it's like a bigger body. You have like a bigger nervous system to do things. And so what we've been doing is working with grace, being opening for it, like realizing that process, linear process and even psychological process and all the stuff that we've been doing, maybe there's a way to move beyond that. Maybe grace is what is actually operative in a post-Newtonian world, where things blip on and blip out. So we're like practicing with that. People are having miracles. I mean, real miracle. Like somebody who hasn't talked to her father in like 25 years. Her father calls like nothing ever happened. And they're like in conversation. She was just like, where did that come from? And people having like physical things and stuff with their kids happen. I mean, things you don't have control over, things you definitely have nothing that you can say, I did something to fix that. And we're practicing because a collective with this kind of connectivity and power and goodness, there's a lot of good energy and, like we're resonating at a pretty high frequency. There's power. I mean, there's a huge amount of power. It's just like if you had a whole bunch of people building your house or you're just doing it by yourself with your little hammer and nail. I mean, it's a completely different phenomenon. So we're experimenting. I mean, I'm sure in another 20 years, it will be, a major focus of where the work is happening is in hacking into, these collectives and how to come together and what works and what's needed, what isn't needed, and how, what do you have to be, careful of, and what do you give more energy to, because it's a different animal. It's like a different, I've worked personally on people's lives, working with their transformation and in groups for 40 something years. And this is different. It's like teaching this. One of my friends, Terry O'Fallon, who created Stages, it's different levels of human adult development, and it's a brilliant system. And she said, this is causal collective. So you have gross level things, dealing with physical, things that are manifest, and then subtle level work where you're working on energetic things and emotional things and, sort of your history and whatever. Causal is like this even more invisible source point. And we actually have created a causal collective. It's like we can't even explain it, but we're staying inside of a certain frequency and work that has an enormous amount of power. So, and that to me is heaven on earth. I mean, if I were the divine, I'd be like, keep going, guys. This is good. I feel like it was a good thing to be able to do that.
Patricia, thank you so much for this. And if people want to find out more about really this exciting work, I love this, the notion of grace. I mean, that's a very important,
Yeah.
Experience for me, not even concept.
Sort of up-leveling the notion of it, because it has religious overtones, and we've been sort of unpacking it. So it's from a place of no cause and effect. What if there's no cause and effect? Because there actually probably isn't. It's a whole other conversation.
Yeah,
but
not for today, but I love that. All right, so if people want to find out more, how can they find out more?
They can just go to evolutionarycollective.com.
Good, and we'll put that up on the screen.
evolutionarycollective.com, and what they should do is, it says, if you're new to this, they should download the Mutual Awakening. There's a free ebook that really describes where it came from, the story, what this new paradigm is, and it's a beautiful color, downloadable free thing that they can find out more about it. And there are online ways that people can come and experience Mutual Awakening, experience the practice that you've been involved in, with Randy and Lori, so they can do that. We have a thing called the 4 pillars. So every 3 months, people come together and actually from all over the world, and we practice together. So it's very accessible.
I've been doing this, I think, 2 or 3 years with this group of 2 guys out of your course, and it really, you're right. There's a deepening of we-ness that goes on, and grace. So, Patricia, thank you. Thanks so much for this brilliant, brilliant work, and for your being a heaven on earth, angel of heaven on earth.
All right, you too. Thank you for keeping the floodgates open and actually evoking this in people, for people to find out that they are a channel for heaven on earth.
Thanks, Patricia.